Hello everyone, my name is Vinette Love and this presentation will discuss stage 6 of Erikson's developmental theory as identified in the older adult interview for Widener University SW501. During this presentation, I will discuss segments of two interviews I had the pleasure of conducting with my neighbor's pastor. I chose her because, like myself, she's from the Caribbean, but we are from different countries. Also, I had listened to some of her sermons and I was intrigued by her openness. The interview was conducted in 2 parts and on 2 separate days. Since she had given me enough information during the phone interview, but when she agreed to have her voice taped, I was excited. However, there were so many disruptions, I eventually decided to combine the information gathered and hope for the best. So we will discuss the developmental stages of intimacy versus isolation, which is the stage 6 developmental. This stage occurs between the age of 20 to 40 years old and will be discussed throughout the presentation. The expectations are employment, marriage, building own home, and raising a family. Intimacy versus isolation based on Erikson's theory is a period when young adults identify their strengths in building intimate relationships. These relationships can be identified romantically or among their peers, usually projected in work and social activities. The isolation factor is possible due to former or present expectation and or beliefs which eventually may lead to loneliness, mistrust, or sometimes low self-esteem. Erikson's theory on intimacy versus isolation, was chosen for this presentation based on major changes identified in the participant's life stage in her early 20s, some of which were she migrated to the United States from Antigua, she had to assimilate to a new culture, and of course she got married. So her experiences in immigration: she left the safety of her family and familiar settings with high hopes and expectations of pursuing higher education. She also indicated that immigration was a means of separating herself from a cramped household. Her assimilation to new culture: she was awed but excited about the American family she was to live with. The interviewee was a Christian migrating from the Caribbean, but she moved into a Jewish household into a universally diverse neighborhood. Her marriage was an important milestone in her life. It was ideal in regards to her beliefs, yet marriage was also a necessity for her transition to legal residency in the United States. Also, getting married provided an escape from the unfortunate situation which had developed in the home she was living and working into. Hence, she married someone 10 years older than herself and someone she hardly knew. So there were difficulties in her marriage, and of course, then she had her accomplishments. So, difficulties. She met someone to confide in, and he promised her, her experiences. She met someone to confide in, and he promised her a fulfilling life of romance and stability. Don't we all need that? He also promised to facilitate her petition for permanent residency, which was necessary for her to continue living and working in the United States. Then she had children. Her husband also wanted children, and she also believed that children would complete her union and solidify a happy marriage. Therefore, having 2 girls in an already volatile relationship was her opinion of wishful thinking. Yes, there was domestic abuse. She was continuously abused physically, verbally, and sexually, but she remained in the marriage while waiting for immigration status to change. According to Vatmar Vygotsky, violence and immigration relationships includes various situations. In this situation, it was the violence while she was waiting for her transition. She eventually escaped her violence and hence she was homeless. So her escape from domestic abuse triggered unexpected challenges, including the loss of employment, housing, and friends. The most traumatic experience was the loss of her children as they were taken away by her husband. This difficult period invoked negative behaviors including drug use, prostitution, and eventual incarceration. Her accomplishments. Escaping domestic abuse from this marriage was plagued with isolation and isolation. She was denied the experiences of developing friendship, yet she was afraid of being on her own before gaining her college degree and the security of a visa. However, she also realized that she had to defend herself, which eventually provided her escape from the abuse. In other words, it was an accomplishment to escape, however, she became homeless. Naturalization, which was necessary for each immigrant in the United States. Her relationships were sabotaged by negative behavior. Then the escape from those experiences caused another bout of negative activity during the period of being homeless. So she was assisted to a woman's shelter, and in that shelter, she was introduced to alternate resources to apply for and receive her permanent resident visa, a major accomplishment for her. Of course, she came here for college education, and she got it. She was able to reconsider her options and choose to revive her original dreams to pursue a college education. She never went to medical school. In fact, she attended a local community college and became certified as a daycare provider. She eventually managed her own business and with her faith reestablished, even with her continued pursuit for her missing children, she entered into another romantic relationship. This relationship yielded 2 more children who she successfully raised while she successfully managed her own daycare center. Purchasing a home. Owning a home was one of her greatest accomplishments. She experienced peacefulness in her new home, and this peace led her to develop a more distinct level of intimacy within her environment. So, her psychosocial crisis resolution. In the interest of time, I will not explain the difference between psychosocial development and crisis, as this is already on the screen, but I must reflect on the different areas in her life which might have led to psychosocial crisis. Even though we are reflecting on the intimacy versus isolation stage, it is easy to introduce some features of the identity versus identity, which may be the result of immigration and the lack of experiences without her familiar surroundings. After all, Erikson indicated that crises can remain unresolved or, in this case, overshadow the next developmental stage. Each of Erikson's developmental stage includes age-specific responsibilities And intimacy versus isolation is almost unique to marriage and raising children. The interviewee met some of those requirements in that she was married and had children. However, she was unable to maintain a normal marriage due to domestic abuse. The resolution for the domestic abuse was separation and divorce. She tried to reestablish her autonomy. She was comfortable in her own apartment with her two girls, but they were taken away from her by their own father, so she lost hope. Another unexpected occurrence in her life was how she dealt with the loss of her children. In my opinion, each occurrence could be identified as a crisis. However, she was able to return from the depression and the additional trauma of drug use, but she was never united with those missing children until they were adults. So, what was her resolution? The interviewee had initially introduced herself as a Caribbean visitor who had entered this country in her early 30s, and her intentions were to secure meaningful employment, a stable home, complete her education, and become a doctor. Additional information revealed that she grew up in a Christian home with both parents and 12 siblings. Therefore, she was expected to marry and raise children with her husband, which was part of her culture. She explained that she had never seen or heard of anyone in her family ever experiencing domestic abuse. Besides, her husband always apologized for his behavior, and at that time she believed that her own behavior attracted repercussions, hence the physical abuse. When asked why she had those feelings, she indicated that her parents and siblings usually tell her that she had too much opinion, and during the time with her husband, she was led to believe what she was told as a child. So, her inhibitors. She agreed that family, values, and cultural attributes resonated with her throughout the years of searching for her daughter. She recalled that family was very important in her culture, which meant that the children should always be protected. Therefore, losing her children would not be accepted by her family. Also, she felt that she had let down her children by allowing them to be taken away from her. Hence, all she ever wanted to do was find her girls, as that would give meaning to her life. Initially, she never told her family about her living conditions, as she never wanted to go home without the girls. She knew that if her family knew of her struggles, the cultural connection of closeness in their family, they would have sent her a ticket and she would have gone home. But she could not have left her children. Besides, if she did leave her children, that would also be a failure in her culture. The interview said her self-destructive behavior was eventually deflected by her culture. Hence her resolution. Her religion and her children might have inhibited her resolution of the psychosocial crisis. However, those same factors facilitated the resolution, and her response to positive change was that she reached back to her roots and found her religion. Then everything started to fall back into place. She was able to pursue enough education to support herself, reestablish herself as an upstanding naturalized citizen in the United States of America. She was reminded of how her mother kept praying and how happy they all were throughout her growing years. Hence, it was definitely her religion and culture that led her to a positive resolution.